All right, everybody, welcome back. We're tackling a big one today, The Art of the Deal. Donald Trump's, well, legendary book, I guess you could call it.
Yeah, it's a classic. And it's not just for real estate moguls either.
That's right.
Yeah.
Even if you're not planning on, building casinos in Atlantic City, there's a lot we can all learn from this book about negotiation, persuasion, and, well, the art of getting what you want.
Absolutely. It's a fascinating look into the mind of a master deal maker.
So, before we dive into the specifics, can you give us a quick overview of the book for folks who might not be familiar?
Sure. The Art of the Deal is part memoir, part business advice book. It was written back in the 80s when Trump was first making a name for himself in New York real estate.
And it's written in this very distinctive voice, right? Very bold, very confident. Some might even say a little bit brash.
Yeah, that's definitely part of his charm or his brand, depending on how you look at it.
Right, exactly. Now, the book is structured in a kind of interesting way. It starts with this Week in the Life section, where Trump takes us behind the scenes of his insanely busy schedule.
It's a whirlwind of phone calls, meetings, site visits, power lunches, you name it. You really get a sense of the pace at which he operates.
It's exhausting just reading about it.
Yeah, no kidding.
But amidst all the chaos, there are these amazing anecdotes that really bring his personality to life. Like, remember the one about his aversion to briefcases?
Oh, yeah, he talks about how he likes to keep things very loose, which I found kind of funny. It's like he wants to project this image of being spontaneous and, in control, even if he's actually meticulously planning everything.
Right, it's an evil part of the image. And then there's that story about saving Mrs. Hill's farm in Georgia. Remember that one?
Oh, yeah, that was a wild one. The bank was going to foreclose on her farm, and Trump swoops in and basically threatens to sue them for murder.
He claimed they harassed her husband to death, right?
Exactly. It's this crazy example of his fight back mentality, which we'll talk about more later. But it shows how far he's willing to go to get what he wants.
And it worked, right. Mrs. Hill got to keep her farm.
She did. It's almost like something out of a movie. And then there's that funny story about his encounter with the head of the Schubert organization.
Oh, yeah. He's offered these free theater tickets, but Trump initially refuses because he doesn't want to feel obligated.
Yeah, it's this weird mix of pride and, shrewdness. It's almost like he wants to be seen as this self-made man who doesn't need any favors, but at the same time, he's not afraid to use his connections when it benefits him.
Right, it's all part of the game.
Yeah.
So those anecdotes are fun, but they also kind of set the stage for the real meat of the book, which is Trump's 9 principles of deal-making. He calls them his trump cards.
Yeah, it's like his playbook for success, the strategies and tactics he's used to build his empire.
And some of these principles are, well, let's just say they're a little bit controversial.
Oh, definitely. Some people might even say they're unethical, but there's no denying that they've been incredibly effective for him.
So let's dive into those trump cards, one by one. First up is think big. And I think this is a classic Trump mantra, right? He's all about setting these huge, ambitious goals and not being afraid to dream big.
Absolutely. He argues that if you're going to be thinking anyway, you might as well think big.
And he gives some examples from his own life, right?
Yeah.
Like his early fascination with Manhattan skyscrapers.
Yeah, he talks about how he was drawn to these grand, ambitious projects. It's like he saw them as symbols of success and wanted to create something even bigger and bolder.
And that ambition is what ultimately led him to build Trump Tower, right? This gleaming skyscraper in the heart of Manhattan. It's the epitome of think big, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. And it's not just about the size of the project, it's about the mindset. He encourages readers to break free from limiting beliefs and to really think about what's possible.
So it's not just about real estate. This principle applies to any goal you set, right? Whether it's starting a business, writing a book, running a marathon, you got to think big and believe in your ability to achieve it.
Exactly. Now, the second principle is protect the downside. This one is all about minimizing risk and making sure you don't lose your shirt, even if the deal goes south.
It's the opposite of that, go big or go home mentality.
Right.
It's more about being strategic and calculated, even when you're aiming for something huge.
Right. He argues that you should always consider the worst-case scenario and have a plan to mitigate the potential losses. He gives the example of his approach to Atlantic City, where he waited to secure his gaming license before starting construction on his casino.
Which is in stark contrast to Barron Hilton, who started building his casino before getting licensed and ended up having to sell it to Trump, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's a good reminder that even the most successful people make mistakes, and that sometimes the best strategy is to be cautious and patient.
So think big is the vision, and protect the downside is the safety net. It's good balance, I think. Okay, what's the next principle?
The third principle is maximize your options. This one is all about flexibility and being prepared to pivot if things don't go as planned.
So it's like having a plan B and a plan C and maybe even the plan D.
Exactly. He always has multiple plans in place just in case things go wrong.
He's like a chess player, always thinking a few moves ahead.
Exactly. He gives the example of Trump Tower again. He had alternative plans for the building if he hadn't gotten the zoning approvals he wanted. He was prepared to build a smaller tower or even an office building, depending on the circumstances.
So it's about being resourceful and having a backup plan, right? It's like that saying, hope for the best, but prepare for the worst.
Exactly. And it's something we can all apply to our own lives. Whether you're negotiating a job offer or planning a vacation, it's always a good idea to have options and be prepared to adjust your strategy if needed.
Makes sense. Okay, what else? What's the next trump card?
Number 4 is know your market. This one emphasizes the importance of, well, really understanding your industry, your customers, your competition, doing your research.
And Trump talks about doing his own research, right? Talking to people on the ground, trusting his gut instincts.
Yeah. He even mentions chatting up cab drivers to get their take on a neighborhood, which I thought was kind of funny.
It's like he's this master networker, always gathering information from, these unexpected sources.
It's an interesting approach, relying more on informal information gathering than, traditional market research.
But it seems to work for him, right? He's got this knack for understanding what people want and how to sell it to them.
Right. And I think the key takeaway here is that knowledge is power. The more you know about your market, the better equipped you'll be to make smart decisions and negotiate effectively.
Absolutely. So do your research, ask questions, and don't be afraid to get your hands dirty. That's what I'm hearing.
Exactly. Now, the 5th principle is use your leverage. This is where Trump's negotiating skills really come into play. He's a master at finding and exploiting leverage points.
So it's about understanding the power dynamics in a negotiation and figuring out how to tip the scales in your favor.
Right. He believes that every negotiation has leverage points, and it's up to you to find them and use them to your advantage.
But isn't that kind of, manipulative? I mean, using someone's weakness against them?
It can be, but it's also a reality of negotiation. I mean, every negotiation involves a certain amount of give and take, and both sides are trying to get the best possible outcome for themselves. The key is to do it ethically and with integrity.
That's a good point. So use your leverage doesn't mean being ruthless or, taking advantage of people. It's more about being strategic and understanding the nuances of negotiation.
Exactly. And it's a skill that can be learned and developed over time. The more you practice, the better you'll become at identifying leverage points and using them effectively.
All right, so we're halfway through Trump's trump cards. I'm already feeling like a master negotiator. What's next?
Well, principle number 6 is enhance your location. This one kind of challenges the conventional wisdom that location is everything.
Yeah, Trump argues that you can actually improve a location through smart promotion and by creating a sense of excitement and exclusivity.
He uses the example of the Grand Hyatt, which wasn't in the most desirable part of town, but he managed to elevate its image through design, marketing, and sheer force of personality.
So it's about taking something ordinary and making it extraordinary, adding that wow factor.
Exactly. And it's something we can apply to anything we do, whether you're selling a product, promoting an event, or even just decorating your home. It's about paying attention to the details and creating an experience that people will remember.
Okay, I like that. What's next?
Principle number 7 is get the word out. This one is all about the power of publicity and self-promotion. And Trump is a master at this, even if it means, stirring up a little controversy.
Oh yeah, he's definitely not afraid to be the center of attention.
He understands that all publicity is good publicity, even if it's negative. He even cites the incident with the Bonwit Teller sculptures, which we'll discuss later.
Right, those infamous sculptures. It's interesting how a single decision can have such a lasting impact on your reputation.
It's a reminder that perception is reality, and that in today's, media-saturated world, it's more important than ever to manage your image and control the narrative.
So get the word out isn't just about, shouting from the rooftops. It's about being strategic and using every available channel to get your message across.
Exactly. And it's not just for celebrities or, business moguls, whether you're looking for a new job, promoting your business, or just trying to raise awareness for a cause you care about. It's important to find creative ways to get the word out and connect with your audience.
Okay, 2 more principles to go. What's next?
Principle number 8 is fight back. This one is all about standing your ground, protecting your interests, and not letting anyone push you around.
Yeah, Trump definitely has a reputation for being let's say, assertive.
He believes in fighting for what he believes in, even if it means making enemies along the way.
But isn't that a bit, aggressive? I mean, can't you negotiate without resorting to fighting?
It depends on the situation. Sometimes you have to stand up for yourself and be assertive to get what you want, but it's important to do it strategically and not let your emotions get the better of you.
So it's about choosing your battles wisely and knowing when to push back and when to compromise.
Exactly. And it's a delicate balance. You don't want to be a pushover, but you also don't want to be constantly fighting with everyone. The key is to be firm but fair and to always maintain your integrity.
I can get behind that. What's the last principle?
The final principle is deliver the goods.
Hmm.
This one emphasizes the importance of quality attention to detail and following through on your promises.
It's basically saying that talk is cheap. It's all about delivering on your promises and exceeding expectations.
Exactly. And this applies to everything we do in life. Whether you're running a business, building a relationship, or simply trying to be a better person, it's about doing what you say you're going to do and striving for excellence in everything you do.
So deliver the goods is about integrity, reliability, and exceeding expectations. It's a great principle to end on.
It is.
So we've covered all 9 of Trump's trump cards. What stands out to you the most?
I think what's fascinating is how these principles, while seemingly simple, can be applied to so many different areas of life. It's not just about business, it's about negotiation, persuasion, and really understanding human psychology.
It's like a roadmap for success, but it's also a glimpse into the mind of a man who's achieved, extraordinary things, even if his methods are sometimes controversial.
Exactly. And it's up to each individual to decide how they want to apply these principles and whether they align with their own values and ethics.
All right, so we've got a good grasp of Trump's deal-making philosophy. Now let's dig a little deeper into the man himself. The next section of the book is called Growing Up, and it offers a fascinating glimpse into his formative years.
Yeah, this is where we start to see the influences that shaped his personality and his business approach.
Right, we're going to meet his parents, hear stories about his childhood, and learn about his early experiences in the real estate world. Stay tuned.
It's interesting, isn't it? You can really see how Trump's upbringing shaped him even in those early years.
Yeah, you get this real sense of his parents, Fred and Mary, these two very different personalities who kind of pushed him in different directions.
Right. On the one hand, you've got his mother, who he describes as being, drawn to glamour and spectacle. She was fascinated by things like Queen Elizabeth's coronation.
Yeah, like the whole pomp and circumstance of it all.
Exactly. And then you've got his father, this very pragmatic, detail-oriented real estate developer who, he didn't have much patience for that kind of thing.
Trump even tells this funny story about how his dad would be pacing around during these grand events, muttering about how everyone was a bunch of con artists. Yeah.
It's hilarious, but it also kind of tells you a lot about where Trump got his business sense.
Right. Like the ability to see through the smoke and mirrors and focus on the bottom line.
Exactly. And despite their differences, both parents really instilled in him this incredible work ethic and this drive to succeed.
He talks about learning the ropes of the real estate business by working alongside his father, watching him negotiate deals, manage properties, always looking for ways to do things more efficiently.
Yeah, it sounds like a pretty intense apprenticeship.
Yeah, no kidding.
Right.
But it clearly had a profound impact on him. He learned the importance of, competence, attention to detail, being prepared.
He even quotes his father as saying, "The most important thing in life is to love what you're doing because that's the only way you'll ever be really good at it."
And that's something that Trump definitely seems to take to heart, right? He's clearly passionate about deal making and building things.
Absolutely. But at the same time, there's also this sense that he wanted to prove himself, He wanted to create something even bigger and grander than what his father had accomplished.
He wasn't content with just, managing properties in Brooklyn and Queens. He had his sights set on Manhattan.
Yeah, that ambition, that desire to kind of to surpass his father's legacy is a recurring theme throughout the book.
And that's really where things start to get interesting when he ventures out on his own. He talks about buying and managing his first big property, Swifton Village, this massive apartment complex in Cincinnati.
It was a real trial by fire for him. He had to learn how to deal with difficult tenants, navigate the complexities of property management, build a team.
And then there's Irving, this unforgettable property manager that he describes.
Oh, Irving, yeah. He sounds like a real character.
Trump describes him as this fat, bald-headed guy with thick glasses and hands like Jell-O. But apparently he had this uncanny ability to collect rent from delinquent tenants.
He basically scared them into paying up. Right?
Yeah, it was all an act, of course, but it was effective. Trump writes, he was very much like a lion tamer. His whip was his mouth.
That's a great line.
It is. But this experience with Swift and Village also taught him a valuable lesson about trusting his instincts. He tells this story about a tenant, a Jewish man who had survived a concentration camp, who advised him to sell the property.
He warned him that the neighborhood was going downhill, right?
Yeah, he said something like, it's being surrounded by people who are so bad they will cut your throat and walk away and not even think about it. I'm talking about people who enjoy cutting throats.
Wow, that's pretty intense.
It is. And what's amazing is that Trump actually listened to him. He sold the property for a big profit, just before the neighborhood started to decline.
It shows that he's not always driven by ego, you know? He's capable of listening to advice, even if it means walking away from a potentially profitable situation.
So he's cut his teeth in the outer boroughs, learned some valuable lessons from his father and his experiences with Swift and Village, and now he's setting his sights on the ultimate prize, Manhattan.
The next section of the book, The Move to Manhattan, is all about those early years in the city. It's a time of, exploration, networking, and searching for that perfect deal that will really launch his career.
He describes moving into this tiny studio apartment on the Upper East Side that he jokingly refers to as his penthouse. It's kind of funny to imagine this ambitious young guy crammed into this tiny space, dreaming of conquering the city.
He doesn't waste any time, though. He jumps right into the social scene, joins Le Club, this exclusive hangout for the rich and famous.
He starts rubbing shoulders with, some of New York's most powerful players.
It's like he's studying them, trying to figure out how they operate, how they got to where they are.
Learning the rules of the...
Exactly, and he's not afraid to be bold either. Remember how he got into Le Club? He basically just bombarded the club president with calls until the guy finally agreed to meet him for a drink.
Pure persistence.
Yeah, he wouldn't take no for an answer. And that's a trait that definitely comes in handy later on.
It's also during this period that he meets Roy Cohn, the infamous lawyer who becomes his mentor and close friend.
Cohn was a controversial figure, to say the least.
Yeah, he had this reputation for being a fixer, someone who could get things done no matter what.
And Trump clearly admired that about him. He saw in Cohn someone who understood the rules of the game and wasn't afraid to bend them, to get what he wanted.
It's an interesting dynamic, this unlikely friendship between the brash young developer and the seasoned power broker.
And then, of course, you have the backdrop of New York City in the early 1970s. The city's in a financial crisis, everyone's panicking, but Trump sees opportunity.
He famously writes, "I worried about the future of New York City too, but I can't say it kept me up nights. I saw the city's trouble as a great opportunity for me."
It's classic Trump, right? Seeing potential where others see only problems.
And that leads him to his first major Manhattan project, the Grand Hyatt Hotel. And this is a project that almost didn't happen.
He had to overcome a whole series of obstacles, right? Securing the property, finding a partner, convincing the city to give him this massive tax break, getting the banks to finance the whole thing.
It sounds like a logistical nightmare.
It was. He was dealing with a failing company, the Penn Central Railroad, who owned the Commodore Hotel, the property he wanted to transform into the Hyatt.
The Commodore was a real fixer-upper, losing money, falling apart. But Trump saw the potential.
It was in a prime location, right next to Grand Central Station. He managed to get the property from Penn Central for a steal, but then he needed a hotel partner.
And that's where Hyatt comes in, right?
Exactly. He convinces the Hyatt hotel chain to come on board, which was huge for him. Hyatt was known for its high-quality hotels, and their involvement gave the project instant credibility.
So he's got the property, he's got a partner, but he still needs financing. And this is during a financial crisis when banks are, basically terrified to lend money for anything, let alone a risky project like this.
That's where his negotiating skills really come in. He realizes that he needs to sweeten the deal, so he sets his sights on a tax abatement from the city.
A tax abatement?
Yeah, it's basically a reduction in property taxes, often offered as an incentive for developers to invest in blighted areas or create jobs.
Oh, he's using the city's financial woes to his advantage.
Exactly. He argues that the city needs this project more than he does, and that it will ultimately benefit everyone by creating jobs and revitalizing a struggling neighborhood.
And they buy it.
They do. He negotiates an unprecedented 40-year tax abatement in exchange for sharing a percentage of the profits with the city. It's a controversial move, for sure, with some people accusing him of getting special treatment, but he defends it by saying that he's taking a huge risk and that the project will ultimately benefit everyone.
It's a bold move, that's for sure. And it pays off. The Grand Hyatt opens in 1980 and is a huge success, establishing him as a major player in the Manhattan real estate scene. But he's not one to rest on his laurels, right? He's already got his eyes on an even bigger prize, Trump Tower. Okay, so Trump Tower, right? This wasn't just going to be another building. It was going to be like the ultimate symbol of, his arrival, his triumph.
Yeah, he wanted to make a statement. And the location he chose, well, that said it all, Fifth Avenue, right on the corner of 57th Street.
Prime Manhattan real estate. I mean, that's like the heart of it all, isn't it?
Absolutely, surrounded by Tiffany's, Bergdorf Goodman, you name it, it was the spot. But getting it, that was a whole other story.
So how did he do it? I mean, did he just, wave a magic wand and poof?
Not quite. The site was occupied by Bonwit Teller, this really iconic department store. He approached the CEO, a guy named Franklin Jarman, but Jarman wasn't interested.
He didn't want to give up that prime location. Makes sense.
Right. But then Bonwit got acquired by another company, Genesco, and suddenly there was an opening.
Ah, so he saw his chance and he took it.
He did. He managed to secure a letter of intent to buy the property for, get this, $25 million.
Wow. $25 million.
Yeah.
Back then, that was serious money.
It was, but he had to come up with the cash fast, and the banks, well, they weren't exactly lining up to give him a loan.
So what did he do?
Well, he got creative. Instead of buying the land outright, he realized he just needed to control it, long enough to build the tower, get those tenants in, start generating that revenue.
Okay, that's smart. But how did he swing that?
He approached Equitable Life, the company that actually owned the land under the Bonwit Teller building, and he proposed a partnership.
So instead of buying the land, he basically said, hey, let's team up, build this amazing tower, and we'll both make a fortune.
Exactly. He convinced them that his vision for the site would make their land way more valuable than it was with just a department store on it.
And while he was working on that, he was also pursuing the air rights above Tiffany's.
Right, air rights. Those are essentially the rights to build up vertically. You can buy the air above someone else's building and use it to add floors to your own.
Wow, it's like real estate goes 3D.
Exactly. It's a whole other level of complexity. But Trump pulled it off. He secured those air rights. But he still needed one more little piece of the puzzle, a tiny parcel of land next to Tiffany's.
Talk about cutting it close.
Right. It was owned by a family trust, and getting them to sell, well, that wasn't easy. But eventually, he managed to negotiate a deal. And with that, he had everything he needed to build his dream tower.
So the site's assembled, he's got his financing, and now it's time to design the actual building. What was his vision for Trump Tower?
He wanted to create a landmark, something truly spectacular. He worked with this architect, Der Scott, and they came up with this design for a 68-story skyscraper, glass and bronze, with this huge atrium in the middle.
That atrium is pretty iconic, isn't it?
It is. It was a really bold move at the time to create this grand public space within a private building.
And of course, it was all about luxury.
Oh, absolutely. Trump spared no expense. The finest materials, top-of-the-line appliances, everything was designed to convey this sense of, wealth and exclusivity.
Well, it wasn't all smooth sailing, was it? I mean, a project of that scale in that location, I'm sure there were some challenges.
Oh, yeah, plenty. The city had concerns about the size and scale of the project. There was opposition from preservationists who wanted to save the Art Deco facade of the Bonwit Teller building.
And then, of course, there were those sculptures.
Right, thas beautiful Art Deco bas-relief sculptures. There was a huge public outcry when Trump decided to demolish them.
It became this symbol of his, his willingness to kind of sacrifice art and history for the sake of profit.
Exactly. He claimed that preserving them would have been too expensive and time-consuming, but the damage was done. It reinforced this image of him as a ruthless developer, willing to cut corners to get what he wanted.
And this was all playing out in the media, right? It was a huge story.
Oh, yeah, the press was all over it. And Trump, well, he didn't shy away from the attention. He used it to his advantage, to keep the project in the public eye, to generate buzz.
He's a master of working the media, that's for sure.
He is, and in the end, he managed to overcome all the obstacles, get the approvals he needed, and build his tower. He even won over Ada Louise Huxtable, the notoriously tough architecture critic for the New York Times.
Wow, getting a good review from her, that's no small feat.
Right. She called it a welcome and entertaining addition to the cityscape. High praise indeed.
So the tower's built. Now he's got to sell those luxury apartments. How did he do that?
He targeted celebrities, wealthy foreigners, anyone who aspired to that Trump lifestyle. He created this aura of exclusivity, and it worked. People were clamoring to get in.
And of course, he took the top 3 floors for himself, right?
It did. Created this lavish triplex penthouse that became like this symbol of his ultimate success.
So Trump Tower, it was a massive financial success.
Oh yeah, it made him hundreds of millions of dollars, but it also came at a cost. It solidified his image as this brash, ambitious, and sometimes ruthless businessman.
It's a complicated legacy, isn't it?
It is, but there's no denying that Trump Tower is an iconic building, and The Art of the Deal, well, it's a fascinating glimpse into the mind of the man who built it.
It's a book that's full of, contradictions, right? It's inspiring and repellent, insightful and outlandish. It definitely leaves you with a lot to think about.
It does, and that's what makes it so interesting. It's not a straightforward how-to guide. It's a story about ambition, risk, and the relentless pursuit of success.
So we've come to the end of our deep dive into The Art of the Deal. What are your final thoughts?
I think it's a book that everyone should read, even if you don't agree with Trump's politics or his business practices. It's a window into a different way of thinking, a different approach to the world.
It's definitely a book that stays with you. It makes you question your own assumptions, your own values. It forces you to confront the complexities of success and the compromises we sometimes make to achieve it.
Exactly. It's not a book that offers easy answers, but it does raise some really important questions.
And that's what we're all about here on The Deep Dive, getting you to think, to question, to explore. So we want to hear from you, listeners. What did you think of The Art of the Deal? Did it change your perspective on anything? Head over to our social media pages and let's discuss.